Panel discussion on inclusive leadership, the cornerstone of workplace transformation.
Glad to be here and among all of you. It is really a crucial time to continue our dialogue, our conversation on a DEI. And I'm very fortunate to have a discussion with Dr. Anil, Neetu on how we can create more inclusive world, more inclusive society, and at the same time how it is when it's good for a society, how it is good for a business as well. How what is the value for a business in a DI? Why we continuously talk about it? Many of you are a corporate professional on a working days, sitting here. So what is in it for a company who is designed to make profit? So before we start the conversation, I want to start with a dialogue of a Shah Rukh Khan, but with a twist. अपनी कुर्सी की पेटी बांध लीजिए, हवा बिगड़ने नहीं बदलने वाली है. So, Neetu, my first question is for you. It sounds good, let's say. Dr. Neetu, yeah?
Thanks for manifesting it for me.
So, Neetu, one thing we constantly talk about inclusion, equity, and diversity in a workforce, and I have seen companies are putting a lot of time, lot of effort in providing training and a sensitization to the ground, like an entry-level workforce or a ground workforce, like at the bottom. How do you think, what is the role of a top leadership in at a DEI, and how it is part of every decision they make?
I love this question. For some of you who have been part of discussions with me, I always bring up this whole business perspective to DEI, right? There are multiple, instead of going multiple, there are two sides to this, right? We agree people are the currency. Yes, no, yes, right? So there is an internal element to this, and now there is an external element because business means profits, right? Profit margins. I mean, that's what we understand. I was just saying, you talk to a leadership, they only understand numbers, right? Now, when I'm talking about the internal elements of things, I'm talking about your equitable solutions for providing for people, making sure that they have an ecosystem, accessibility in place, making sure it is data-driven. And when I say data-driven, I'm not saying, okay, at this level we have gaps. No, what's happening to their promotion cycles at the datas, right? What's happening to the leaders who are driving those conversations, right? Not just from your hiring, but from your development perspective, from your representation perspective. Your innovations get missed out if you don't have representation there. There was this example that I had given for one of my interviews, right? Where said, how would you have a DEI conversation with the business, right? How do you bring this? Because it's an HR agenda, right? One of my answers was, we are in the technology industry, right? And accessibility is a huge conversation today, given not just physical, but also neurodivergent accessibility. And it's a huge market in terms of numbers, right? So if we have someone from a wheelchair representing your development ecosystem, innovation ecosystem in an organization, your product will definitely be inclusive to that population as well. If you have someone who's colorblind, you have any idea what's the number of colorblindness around the globe, right? Someone who's colorblind, your products will automatically be having that concept because he can't even develop or she can't even develop the product without being able to see what colors are inclusive in nature, right? So automatically that market gets catered to, right? So that's the business case for DEI, right? Internally, I spoke about how the whole hierarchy system and representation is important. Now, tipping over to the external side, right? When I say innovations and products have to be inclusive, we don't have a choice. Absolutely. I'll give you maybe two examples. The fashion industry. How many of you from fashion industry here? Not many people from manufacturing that side? Great, at least one person. But all of you adorn and are part of the consumer world of the fashion industry, right? So let's talk about this. We belong to, at least as is India Diversity Forum, we are in India. Most of the population is plus size. Yes, we don't cater to the Western or the Korean sizes. Agree? How many of us struggle with this? Men, women, LGBTQ community, all of us. There's no gender to this conversation, right? We all belong to that, right? The loss of not having plus size products in your consumer market is $20 billion globally, right? That's the profit margin you're missing out on, and that's the pain your consumers are going through. So when we are talking about leadership inclusion, this is what we're talking about, right? This is the lack of accessibility we're talking about, just in general. Another example I'll give you, and I'll wrap with that, I promise. Ford, when they did a study, you can look this up at some point, when they did a study, they discovered, and I'm sure a lot of you will relate to this. When was the last time you thought of buying a car or bought a car? Sometime in your, at least this group, I can say it, sometime along the way you've thought of it. Ford did a study and found out 65% of their new car decisions are influenced by women. Think about it. That's a big number, right? Nobody thought about it. Men drive, right? Why are women influencing? Families, right? Now, when they discovered this and when they rectified it and made it a lot more inclusive product, 30% of market share gain into their already existing margins. So this is the cost of non-inclusion is what I'm talking about. Right? So this is a thought that we want to start with on this discussion. Thanks so much for the question.
Thank you, Neetu. And you rightly said that there is a lot of business that companies are missing, a lot of good profits that companies are missing, especially in a real estate. Anyone who's working, who is from a real estate industry? Okay, great. So the thing is, like, when we see the houses, they are not accessible, and disability is not something you are just born with. It can be acquired, it can be temporary, it can be permanent, it can happen anytime, any point of your life. So what is, we all know, like, this is the fact that there is a huge population that you're missing as a customer, as a potential customer. So what is stopping the business? I would like you to continue to respond to that.
Sorry. In India, we're talking about almost 2% of the population, right? Now, I'd like to call out privilege here because I've had the fortune or the privilege of having studied abroad. And when I used to leave university, I used to see this granny, really old. We all are headed there. Just mind you, right? We're all headed in that direction. She, whenever Europe turned a little more inclusive than the rest of the world, every day during my uni time, she would come out from the lift. There was this particular timing, 8:05. I don't know how that works for her, but it worked for me because I'm always 5 minutes late, And she would be at the bus stand in her wheelchair, and a very compact wheelchair. And she'd have this little remote that she keeps navigating. And the fact that she can get out from her building on her own, get to the bus stop just next to me was always like, oh, wow, okay. But I took the steps. How did she get out, right? So there was always another way for the people who needed to use a wheelchair or the crutches to get out of the building, which was non-disturbing the rest of the population. And then the buses would come. Oh, I love Europe for the buses being on time. The buses would come and the ramp would, like, our Range Rover over here that goes down a little bit so that the wheelchair can slide in. And there is a particular space in the bus where the person can stop and park their wheelchair instead of a seat. Now, and then she's gone and about. I get off of my station and I never know what happened to her. I see her next day morning, 8:05 at the bus stop, right? When I came back to India and when I got into the business of disability inclusion, it shocks me. the amount of lack of accessibility and how we further disable people with requirements for movement. We further disable them. Our ramps, our footpaths, our accessibility to buildings, the amount of skills that they come with that we are missing out on, right? And again, my example going back to innovations that we are missing out on, we further disable them and we corner them away. Now, this is not just for people who are born with it. We could also be, like you clearly said, we could also be headed in that direction. Do you really want to be confined? It's a privilege that we have that we're not even taking into consideration. And look up the numbers of disability non-inclusion again. It's another cost that we have to bear, that we're bearing without even realizing it, right?
Thank you, Neetu. So building what we were discussing with Dr. Anil, and we are fortunate to have you on the panel with massive amount of experience you have in the field. We would want to understand, we have talked about merit of a DEI from an angle of a business case. What is the role of inclusive leadership or leaders in making DEI a business priority, and why it is why it is a right thing to do?
Yeah, so Neetu talked about women being influencing the decision of car buying, and I was sitting here. Again looks like I'm a minority here. No, we don't have a diversified forum. So I just thinking. Which are the places where women don't influence the decisions, right? And
There you go.
and by the way, so I also I represent financial services industry, and generally whenever we go on a forum, we have this disclaimer. I just want to start with my disclaimers. I'm extremely biased, and see, I'm a father of 2 daughters. And at my home, I have my wife and my mother. So I am not representing a diverse family. So that's one. Number 2, as far as inclusion and equity is concerned, when I go home, all the decisions are taken by the other side. I'm just a mute spectator. And I hardly participate in the decision-making process. So yes, I don't know. My experience at home is a little different, but fortunately, I represent an organization which is extremely evolved and recognizes DEI as an inherent strength that we should have as a firm, and we continue to invest in all the efforts in that direction. To answer your question, Maira, I think it's all about leadership, right? And it's all about people. And I was talking earlier on to somebody. Of course, you could have all the policies in the world addressing the diversity and inclusiveness. What works is how are you going to enable these policies, right? And the bits that surround these policies or the statements are the ones which are essentially going to make the organization or the initiative successful. So when you put these initiatives together, the approach together, what we loosely can call the kind of culture that you have in an organization, that essentially drives the success of an approach in any organization. And then to that extent, I think I find the leadership, the people who are at the helm, people who are driving and setting the examples for the rest of the organization. I hold them more accountable for the success of the same, since they drive culture, and then since they would drive the success of all the initiatives that we are speaking, or we're going to speak from here on.
That's lovely. And from your experience, what are the defining moment you have seen in your lifetime? So where you have seen the real impact of a DEI or the inclusion, and just to be clear that the term DEI come around between 2020 around, but that does not mean that all the work on inclusion has started happening post 2020. It has been in the system and by different name, different terminology. So what are the changes that you have witnessed during your career, and yeah, what are those defining moments from your experience, if you can share it with us?
Yeah, so honestly, can't credit or can't quote an incident which essentially would have changed the approach towards how one would see the inclusiveness or diversity. I've had work experience from different industries, right from information technology to even earlier on in manufacturing, and then later in the banking. And in each of those organizations or the industries that I would have worked, I would have gotten exposed to different challenges, different facets. I've seen, and this is something which is an argument that we always have, there are roles which are meant for a type of people, and there are roles which are not meant for types. And I've seen those notions have been broken time and again, right? And then seen that and it's been a continuous learning. And then honestly speaking, I'm still learning and experiencing those moments. And then at times you get a deja vu feeling, and then with those surprises and those learning experience, and whenever I get my notion challenged, I feel happy about the same, and I embrace that, and see that I think the world is changing, and one needs to continuously be in that acceptance mode, and then actually keep on questioning oneself, and then really guard against working with those the parameters. I run a business role, and I run a real estate business. Again, real estate business is such that it's basically main domain, right? In ways you can imagine. But I've had massive success stories otherwise, and I've seen the kind of strength and the kind of character the organization demonstrates when you have a diverse kind of work environment and workplace. So so one of the segment of my business is collection. So I collect money from developers, right? So developer is a community, is a kind of a community. So and then recovering money from them is a tad bit difficult. So I have a team of those collection guys. Again, I'm saying collection guys, right? So you need those men who would essentially sit in the office and ask together to ensure that the recovery happens. But I have very solid women, and they're more effective and efficient. And then that again is the experience of, so that is an experience and a notion which essentially has gotten broken, that is not necessary for collection. You'd need men, and so it's a learning, right? I think it's a kind of opportunity that essentially you'll throw at people, and one has to be open about these things. Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned collection, because this is the cue I was looking for. So it's time to brag something about that we did at Godrej Capital. This year we have launched so we are NBFC and collection again as a very important function, like backbone of any business in finance. So this year we have piloted an experiment to have LGBTQ trans people, not just trans, but gays, lesbian, other folks as well, in the collection team. Like when you're hiring people in a certain space, like when it's your office space, you're pretty much confident about things, right? your employees are sensitized, if not sensitized, scared at least. So we have hired 10 people, and and it's been 4 months for us. I'm so proud and happy to share that all the folks are doing amazing work on field, going in the outer area of cities like Udaipur. I'm not talking about Mumbai location. We have hired people in Udaipur, then we have Mumbai, Delhi, Chandigarh. Yeah, I was looking for that city, Chandigarh. So yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm going to have a chat with you after this
Definitely,
session.
would love that.
Sure.
I'd just like to add over here, right? The LGBTQ population around the globe is about 10%, right? Thanks for validating that. And their spending power is huge. We are India going global, right? We're missing out another set of opportunity there, whichever industry you take, right? So that was one thing I wanted to add it there. The other thing, right, when you were talking about the financial industry, right, I'd love to add, this is a very personal anecdote. Recently, there was a wedding conversation in the family, and then the whole marriage alliance broke off. You know what the reason was for that? This is a very personal thing that happened in the family. It broke off because the guy and the girl, this is very traditional, were discussing finances because they're both earning. Right? And I'm very proud to hear that, someone from a family is discussing finances, right? A woman. Yes, go girl, right? I promise I don't have influence on this one. So, the wedding broke off because she said, your money is your money, my money is my money. We'll put it in together in whatever percentage into another bank, which we can own jointly. And this offended the family to the next extent. So the decision making is not just the cars, the houses, like he said, any industry, but now the spending power is also in question in all of these ecosystems that we're talking about, right? So it's no longer good to have, great to have. It is not a choice in equity. The financial industry is missing out on dollars and dollars because the power of currency is still dollar today, right? So there's a lot of opportunities we're missing out.
Wow, I'm going to share this
Yeah,
with my
please.
daughters, this particular anecdote, because generally they say, generally.
I'm not charged.
Yeah.
On this one.
So, and then typically my daughters keep saying, my money is my money, your money is my money too. So, yeah.
I thought that too.
Yeah, but that's what happens in my house actually.
That's true now.
Right.
Yeah.
Back to you.
So when we have been talking about person with disabilities, cis women, and LGBTQ folks, one more thing, we can't see these identities in isolation. There are individuals like myself who on two spectrum. So I am on a spectrum of LGBTQ community, but I am also dyslexic. We see cis women who has a locomotor disability. So it's not just the one aspect of the identity that you have to cater to, but you have to make sure like the support is provided, multi-dimensional support needs to be provided. So how we should go about it, how we should approach to this situation? Neetu, yeah. My bad.
We have landed into the topic of intersectionalities, right? Bang there. So we were up until now segmenting it one way or the other, but if you take a look at the conversation we've been having, we've also been intersecting in the conversations that we've been having since the beginning, right? Any sector, anything of that sort. So intersectionality, thanks for the example, it's a wonderful example to give. So intersectionality is a very, very important conversation, especially because in workplaces, right? Workplaces is a direct representation of the society. Yes, we all agree that. We all say this, we all brag about this as leaders, right? Now, with that comes the responsibility of providing equitable solutions, right? Otherwise, I can again talk about the cost of non-inclusion, but I think I've bragged enough about that. So I'm going to talk about people a little bit now, right? There was a time I was diagnosed with ADHD, right? And I never understood all my life why. There was a time I thought I was dyslexic, but that was not yet a diagnosis, right? The struggle that I went through personally in workplaces is not a joke at all. Me being non-productive is not something I can make peace with as an individual. The cost to the company, we're all leaders over here, we know what we're talking about, right? Retaining is much more lesser than hiring a new person, right? Let's just take 1 lakh rupees per person, right? We hire 10 people, that's 10 lakh rupees, but is that the only salary that we're giving? What about the training, the welcome kit, the providing the cab facilities in the IT organizations or other organizations, all the other benefits that come with it, all of it, right? There's cost attached to hiring a person in multifolds. The insurance support provided to the rest of the organization, all of those things, right? It's not just 10 lakhs that we are calculating in the loss of hiring a new person, whereas retaining a person is much more cost effective. But if we have a workplace that is not, for example, there was this one organization we were discussing about. I had the fortune of having the conversation with the infrastructure head where he came to me, Neetu, go all out. If we're building a new place, what do we want to have in that? I'm like, seriously, you're asking me? I will ask for the world. So they're like, yes, please go all out, right? What are the things that we need? So I start with, yes, let's talk about the crash facility, right? But then what happens with the crash facility is that compliance issues, this, that, we would rather outsource it and all of this. I said, you have any idea what the emotional toil is on the mother? Just because we can't measure it? One. Second, let's talk about accessibility, like you were saying, right? Tech industry, we already spoke about the loss that we're having of not including neurodivergent, people who are blind, or people who have wheelchair experiences. They are experiences we are missing out on in innovations, right? So that is physical accessibility we're talking about. From a neurodivergent standpoint, there are times when I'm done with people. I need my quiet space, right? And to recoup, it is so necessary. Otherwise, I walk into the next meeting, I am not productive. I'm telling you I'm not productive. And this is an awareness I need to have. But how many of us really have this awareness? If the office does not have that recoup space, does not have that quiet space where you can relax, maybe listen to a little water, if that is something that we can afford, I'm not going into the area of privilege, right? Then that's a question. There is sensory requirements people have, touch, feel, to calm themselves down. The expectation of the Indian corporate society on productivity without accessibility is crazy. It's unfair to the next level. 12 घंटे काम करो. I mean, if you understand Hindi, we are in Mumbai. 12 hours, 16 hours, we expect this without providing the support and the comfort of all of this. Right? So all of these things matter to the next level. Sunlight accessibility. We have such amazing AC spaces. People are expected to come to work, but they cannot even, with blocked noses, yeah, and the fever goes on to God knows what levels and next, all of those things. But no, corporates, we are not responsible for that, no. You go to the doctor, we are giving you insurance, sort your medical issues out, work from home a couple of days. How many days? 3 days, 4 days? Oh, now you have to come back to work, okay. But where is the non-AC space for us to come back to work and work from? It's a toil, emotional, physical, in every sense. So it's not an option, at least I don't see it as an option at all, right? So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the response, and we have like a lot of points to like go more deep in that conversation of intersectionality, because it is very complicated space to be in. Dr. Anil, you have spoken about learnings that you have to do, and we are more keen on unlearning. What are the key unlearnings you have to do to pave the ways for others who do not look like or sound like your regular workforce, and what are the roadblocks that you have to face?
Yeah, okay. So typically, I think, in my experience, whenever you talk about any DEI measures, one would argue whether the same would come at a cost of meritocracy. Correct. So, yeah, so you heard that? Yeah. Yeah, I've experienced that, right? So, I think, there earlier conversation, there was a question about age diversity. I think, you asked that question and I was sitting right back there. And obviously, of course, the panel said that, yes, I think, that's something which is recognized. And then they get the adequate statistics to prove that, you have a age diverse organization. Typically, that would be the scene. But I think, age diversity has to be, or any diversity has to be measured a little carefully. It has to be level wise. And once you see that, I think you'll the moment you deep dive and look at statistics a little differently, I think it will throw a very different kind of stuff in a story. So, I've had instances where the organization has driven that, of course, when you go out to hire, and especially when you're doing the campus hiring, you need to ensure that you do a diverse hiring, right? So typically, at least ensure that you have 50% women and the rest could be men. But you go
not
to
necessarily.
but you go to the campus and then you are in a classroom and trying to hire, and especially if you go to the engineering colleges, you have 10% or a 20% class which is women, right? And now you're expected to hire 50%. Your hiring has to be, the supply side itself is not adequate to support. While your expectation, and once you come back, no, we've hired 2 women and 5 boys. Why did you do that type? So because they were not there, or typically you would, when you go to the campuses, good women are the first one to get selected, and you just don't have them to be hired. So I think there's a practical kind of challenges and issues that you face. But as an organization, you need to invest more, right? And then stay at it and then make that additional extra effort to ensure that the equity and inclusion is built. And it's a long-term effort, right? While, I could argue that the supply is only 30-70, how can I make it better? But you're actually working with deficit, which you need to fill. So you need to basically work harder, and you need to probably make it 40-50, 45-55, 40-60, and thus, come at a level where you have an equitable kind of a platform. And that's something which I've experienced, learned, and tried to practice. Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. Thank you so much for sharing this. And actually, like all the senior leaders sitting here must have been the similar journey for them as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Now, we are 2 minutes over time. That's what screen says. But one thing, like this will be unfair if we don't discuss this thing. And I want a very brief response from both of you, actually. What we are seeing at a global level, there are some companies like some US-based companies are rolling back their DEI efforts, and I just said some companies, not actually all or everyone. So, as an Indian company or like company based in India, what are the possibilities or the opportunity that you see, and how do you see what is happening at a global level? So we'll start with Dr. Anil.
A quick one. I think, fortunately, as you said, I represent an Indian organization largely driven by Indian ethos and culture. Our diversity and inclusiveness agenda is driven by largely what we believe in. And with or without the global tone and tenor, we will be like this, right? So there's nothing which dictates our belief in ensuring the inclusiveness. So I think we are very indifferent to that aspect. We don't have a DEI budget. What we have a culture of tolerance. So I think I'm not in a position to kind of comment on that, because it is not going to impact us at all.
Well, that's the kind of response we want. It does not impact us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neetu?
So I've been caught in the fire, honestly speaking, and I know a lot of us are, right? Literally caught in the fire. And at some point, I was kind of naive to think that, global US, it's happening, it's not going to influence us. Until I got to know a lot of fundings that got stopped. It was a shock for me that Mitra Clinic in Hyderabad shut down, because I've been there, and it's very dear to my heart. And that is lack of funding to accessible healthcare, which is basic to a lot of people from the community of LGBTQ, right? Having said that disclaimer, put it out there, I understand business, I understand numbers. I was never a numbers person. I picked up numbers to talk to leaders and have the conversations, right? And I do empathize with leaders put in a position where you have to okay, let's really ramp it down, slow it down with the whole DEI conversation. Honestly, my heart goes out to you, yes. But what we need to realize, global organizations is a huge opportunity to go regional. Absolutely huge opportunity to go regional and to become a lot more contextual in your approach and intentional in your approach for DEI. One. Second, how I see this ecosystem playing out is maybe diversity can take a backseat because of all the push, and now we can focus on inclusion, because I truly believe if equity and inclusion is always in place, your diversity will reflect no matter what. It's a long road home, but it's possible. I have seen it in organizations, I've experienced it, and I've lived it. So I know it's possible. Shortcut was diversity numbers. And your leaky pipelines, if your shortcut is diversity numbers, your leaky pipelines are going to look very leaky, right? We know it, we've been there, right? So this is a great opportunity to work that long-term plan and have sustainable efforts in place, which gives India a huge opportunity to now look at the cultural nuances that play out. All of the examples that we were giving from now is very India contextual, but it applies globally, right? Like I said, we're growing out there. So this is our opportunity to say, okay, the rest of the world may not be inclusive in the products and services and representation, but guess what? We Indians are, right? All the more opportunities in the market. So for me, this looks like a great opportunity. Thank you.